So when it comes to the things that we want to be doing in our lives, we usually have different habits, and those habits are either helping us or they're hurting us. And it's interesting because you would think a habit is something more neutral, but depending on the type of habit, you're going to be doing something that you want to be doing that's going to help you do the things that you want versus the habits that are going to be holding you back and really making sure that you're not achieving all that you can and should be achieving. So today we're going to be talking about habits on this episode and what it is we could do to help build them, the ones that we want to be having, and what we could do is to start breaking the ones that we don't want to be having. And it's interesting because habits is one of those areas where people are probably just going about their days or probably just not even noticing all the habits that they do, whether it's going the same way to work every day, or if you're taking a specific type of drive, whether it's just having your same routine. And routine is not bad. And most habits that people build, I believe there was like 45, I think there's sort of stat, like there's like 45% of our day is like habitual, which is just crazy. And we're just doing things, but we have to make sure that those are the things that we want to be doing. And as long as we're being proactive, as long as we know what those things are, then I think we'll be fine. And if we could start to realize, hey, you know what, I can start to work on myself, I can really become somebody in just by doing certain habits, then that's where it gets really exciting. So let's try to figure out what it is we can start to do to build the right habits and make sure that we are living the lives that we want to be living. Because at the end of the day, we're going to wake up when we're 80, 90, 100, and maybe 120 these days and realize, hey, you know what? I wish I would have done something differently. If I only would have worked on one thing, my life could have totally been different. And so many of the adults that I work with really say that. They say like, oh my gosh, like 20 years ago, if I would have been able to if I would have been able to read 15 minutes a week, like not even a lot, like 15 minutes a week, my life would have been different. If I would have just been able to, invest $10 a week, my life would have been totally different. And what we have to realize is that we have to stay on board with that. We can't allow ourselves to be getting triggered by not taking certain actions. Let's be proactive about it. Let's use more willpower to allow ourselves to do the things that we want to be doing, but set ourselves up in a way that we're going to be successful. Because so many times people look to set themselves up and it's not realistic. They don't really have the experience doing something and they want to be able to be somewhere. For example, when somebody wants to go into entrepreneurship, they think of the basic ideas. Okay, I'm going to sell my product. It's an amazing product. And then all of a sudden, like things are going to go well and I'm going to, make a lot of money. But how many times is that just not realistic? And we have to prepare ourselves. We have to learn the different aspects of the business of whatever the thing that we want to be doing. So whether it's our health, our relationships that we want to be working on, and really learn those skills. And to be honest with ourselves to say, hey, you know what? I'm not so knowledgeable in this area. Or you know what? Maybe what I know is based on somebody else's teachings towards me, like my parents or my teachers that I've had, but maybe there's different areas, different ways to go about it. And it's interesting because in this whole productivity world, you'll have people who are going to be saying both sides. They're going to be saying things that you should be doing. You should be working out in the morning and then you should only be working out at night. And it's like, okay, well, which one works? And I think with a lot of these things, we have to figure out what works for us and what is that we can start to do. And once we figure that out, then we have the ability to move forward and really start to take advantage of that. So I think when it comes to starting with our habits, we have to know who it is that we are, what is going and what is working for us. But when it comes to breaking our habits, and I think this is something interesting, is that we have to know our patterns. We have to know the things that trigger us. Because so many times we get into a situation and we are putting ourselves in this situation sort of on purpose, not like consciously, but subconsciously we're putting ourselves in that position. So if we know we're going to be wasting a lot of energy having a certain conversation with somebody, maybe our boss or maybe our spouse, unfortunately, or maybe somebody that we know is just going to drain us, and then we know we're going to be just like wiped afterwards. So that's not the time to like have the ice cream in the house. That's not the time to have the alcohol in the house. It's not the time to just have your cigarettes around. And if we could start to recognize, hey, what are those things that trigger me? What are those things that really just suck my energy out? That once I do that thing, I'm going to just be wiped. I'm going to be just done. Then we have the ability to start setting ourselves up. And what we have to realize is we have to set ourselves up in the times that we do have that energy, the time that we do have the ability to be more proactive and really take advantage of the thing that we want to be doing. Because throughout our day, we have this gas tank. And if we can start to say, hey, throughout my day, my gas tank is going down now. Down at the end of the day, I'm just exhausted and wiped. So it's the reason why at nighttime people fall for whatever things that they're going to be falling for. And if we can start to say, hey, you know what? I need to set myself up properly. So when that time does come, I'm not going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to have the ice cream in the house. Right? I'm not going to have the cigarettes in the house. And I might crave it, I might want it, but guess what? In the beginning, that force, that thing that you're trying to separate yourself from might be the thing that's going to be able to help you just get to that next stage and next level. And if we can start to recognize that, then we have the ability. So knowing what triggers us, and everybody has different triggers. And if we can start to recognize what's within us, what are the things that we want to be working on? So whether it's even if like you want to be waking up earlier in the morning. So what are your triggers that don't allow you to wake up early? Is it because you're going to sleep very late at night? Is it you don't have a great morning routine and therefore there's nothing really looking forward to become productive? If you haven't checked out our YouTube video on waking up earlier, I have a whole routine that you can start to get up earlier. It's how I started getting up at a certain point. I was waking up at like 4:15. Like you should definitely check it out. It's definitely something that can be really, really valuable. But just recognizing, hey, what are those things that I want to be doing and what's holding me back from those things? Or, maybe I tried to get on a diet, but what didn't work that time? Maybe it was I didn't have enough accountability. Maybe I just, wasn't eating the right food. Maybe I was only working out, but I wasn't doing the food thing, or I was doing the food thing and I wasn't doing the working out thing. And what is it that we can start to do to allow ourselves to really start to become more successful? And I think if we could start to figure that out, if we could start to look at that, then it changes everything. And so many times people don't realize we have that ability to just set ourselves up. We just have to be smart and honest with ourselves. Because at the end of the day, we're going to look back at ourselves and we're going to be honest with ourselves, and we're brutally honest with ourselves when things don't work out the way that they do. So might as well be brutally honest with ourselves before that and to really set ourselves up in the appropriate way. So it's saying, hey, you know what? I'm really terrible at spending money on my credit card. I'm not going to have a credit card anymore. I'm only going to use debit cards. Or, I'm going to give it to my spouse or my sibling to really hold on to in case of an emergency. And really setting up the right boundaries for ourselves in order for us to become successful. And I think if you start to do that, then we really have the ability to make certain things happen. And people don't realize and they don't recognize that you have more control than you do, but you do. And you just have to set yourself up properly. If we can start to set ourselves up properly, then we can start to move forward. The next thing is recognizing that when it comes to these habits, we have to be able to set the right disciplines. And it goes back to this idea where people have certain expectations how things should be. I need to be waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, so I'm going to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. And it might be, you could maybe wake up 1 day or 2 days, or maybe even 3 days. But recognizing that that's probably not so realistic if you're somebody who usually wakes up at like 9, 10 o'clock. And you're just setting yourself up for failure. And if we could just start to set ourselves up and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to do something. I'm going to allow myself to slowly build up to that. So in the next 30 days, I'm going to be waking up at 4 o'clock. That's very different than saying I'm going to be doing it tomorrow. And there's some people who are very into like, let me just jump into it. Let me burn the boats. Let me do all these things. Yes, that's right. But usually that doesn't last. My personal experience, it usually doesn't last. And if we can start to build up the muscles in order to be waking up earlier, that's going to be the thing that's going to be able to help us move forward. Because how many times have we started something, we were so excited to do something, but then the next day or the next week, we're just like, yeah, we're not doing it. And it's why when the young adults that I work with tell me that they want to, let's say, for example, start to work out and they want to go to the gym and I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week. I'm like, no, you're not. And I'm not letting you go to the gym 5 days a week. Pick 2, maybe 3 days that you're going to go. And what days are you going to go? And we try to get really specific in terms of what it is we want to be doing. Because I know if somebody gets to go to the gym 5 days a week when they haven't been going to the gym ever, all that's going to happen is that in 2 weeks, they're not going to be going at all. And what we have to recognize is that if we can start to set ourselves up properly and play the long game, and I think that's one of the big things that most people don't think about. They're not thinking about the long game. They're not thinking about what it is they can be doing or should be doing. And therefore, because they're not thinking about the long game, they end up trying to get everything right now. And you need to ask yourselves, is it going to be more beneficial for you going to the gym 2 days a week over the next 6 months or 5 days a week for the next 2 to 3 weeks? And the answer is, of course, going to the gym 2 days over the next 6 months and really building that habits. And maybe when you get to a certain point, you're like, I'm going to add an extra day. I have it in my schedule. I can do it. I have my routine. And once we start to recognize that, then we have that ability to start to become more successful. And so many people don't even realize that we can start to do those things. And it really just takes the small disciplines. I always talk about this story about how when I started working on my own personal development, I started with just walking around the block. It was literally a 5-minute walk. I was listening to Jim Rohn, and Jim Rohn's like, you got to walk around the block. And I was like, all right, going to walk around the block. And I literally started just 5 minutes walking around the block. And I really put all my productivity since that point on that moment, on that time when I said, you know what, I'm going to start slow, because I was very, very big into dreaming big. And I'm still into dreaming big, but it's framing it very differently. It's playing a longer timeline than most people, because most people need to have it today. They need to be feeling great today. They need to be having those relationships today. And I'm like, you know what, I'm going to play the long game over here. And I'm going to constantly be tweaking it, constantly looking to get better. And if we can start to do that, that's going to be a totally different game that we're playing. And so many people don't realize that all it really takes is a small discipline. So what's your discipline that you're going to take? Feel free to put in the comments what's something you want to work on. We could try to use an example. But really, what is the thing that we want to start to work on? What is the thing that we can start to put out in the situation where, hey, you know what? I'm going to do something small. I can start to take this bite-sized chunk and really make something happen from it. And I think so many people don't realize that we have that ability. We have the opportunity to be working on ourselves. And if we could start to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to be doing something different. I'm going to be able to be moving and working on myself in this specific area. That's going to be the thing that's going to really help us. And so many people are just trying to get started and don't make it complicated. Pick one thing. So if it's, you want to be working on your weight over the next 30 days. Okay. So what's one thing we can start to do? What's one exercise we could do? What's one thing we should stop eating? Or what's one thing, you know, that we can start working on in our schedule of eating? We want to start waking up earlier in the morning. How can we wake up 10 minutes earlier tomorrow? And I know it seems so small, but I'm telling you, in the long run, the big picture, it makes so much sense, and you're going to hit your goals. And not just that, you're going to be able to keep it for the long term. Because when we do these things, when we want to work on our weight, when we want to work on waking up early, when we want to be able to work on these relationships, what we really want is we want this for the rest of our lives. We just don't want it for a specific time. We don't want it for the next 3 months or 6 months. We want this to be part of our life. And if we could start to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to be doing this in the long run, that's going to be the thing that's going to be able to help me. So recognizing that is going to be huge when it comes to our goals, setting those small disciplines. The next is recognizing that we're going to need to understand our own energy levels. So if we're not getting enough sleep, if we're not eating well, if we're angry all the time, those things are not going to be helping us be working on ourselves in terms of the things that we want. Because a lot of the time we have this desire, we have this drive to be doing something that we don't want to be doing. And if we are constantly have this low energy, so all it's going to do is going to hurt us. It's one of the reasons why I started waking up at 4:15 and then I went back to 5:12. And the reason why is because when I was at 4:15, I saw that my whole day was like messed up. I was like not getting enough sleep. I could have went to sleep earlier, but just on my schedule, it didn't really work out. And I said to myself, you know what, I'm going to start. I started waking up at 4:15. I think I did it for a couple months even. And I'm like, I think we're like more like, I think better. It's better that I actually wake up a little bit later. And knowing ourselves and just getting that feedback, I think it'd be something that could be really beneficial for us. So recognizing when we can start to work on ourselves, when we can start to do these things, that's going to be the thing that we can start to figure out what does it need to be doing. But understand your energy levels, understand that you're going to have to come up with this willpower. And so many times it's interesting because when people start a specific goal or a specific habit, the first day is sometimes really exciting, make you do it. The second day also. I find by the third and fourth day, those are the hardest days. So based on my feedback that I'd gotten already, we have to understand how is it that I can prepare myself for the third and the fourth day. So understanding yourself too. When is it that you start to fall off? When is it that you are not necessarily getting so emotionally attached to it anymore? And it's sort of like just going by the wayside. And if we could start to say, hey, it's usually at this type of point, or, usually during the weekends I get rocked, or during the summer I get rocked. Like we could start to understand what it is that we can start to do to allow ourselves to move forward and to really take that action. And so many people don't realize that we have that ability. We can have that control. And if we just prepare it and we get the feedback, so instead of beating ourselves up when we don't wake up on the third, we're trying to wake up early and we don't wake up early on the third day, say, hey, what's the feedback? What didn't happen? And if we can start to realize that that's going to be something that could be really beneficial to us, then that's just great data. It's great information for us in order to become more successful moving forward. And it's just a different mindset shift because there are going to be days that are going to go well and there are going to be days that it's not going to go well. But there are going to be some days that you're going to have to work out and you're like not even in the mood. And going to push yourself to work out is going to be the thing that you're going to need at that moment. So recognizing it's not always going to be a perfect situation that's going to work out with you, especially if you have kids, like one kid gets sick and all of a sudden like your whole day is like thrown off. But recognizing what it is that we can put into our perspective, what it is that we can start to make happen, that's going to be the thing that's going to really help us move forward and really start to take that action. And so many people starting to figure out what it is they could do. And it's the reason why I like starting early. I like morning routines because if I can have a morning routine, then I know I'm going to have the most energy at that part of the day. And you have to know yourself. Some people are morning people, some people are night people. Whether to be a morning person or night person, that's on you. You got to figure it out and be honest with yourself. Because I see a lot of people who say, I'm a night owl. It's okay, that's great, but are you as productive at night, or are you just like binge watching? You're like doing all these other things. And I think if we can start to say, hey, you know what? I am a night owl, but I'm really going to be productive at night. And I am really productive. Or I'm a morning person and I'm going to try to be as productive as I can in the morning. That's going to be the thing that's going to be able to help us. And if we can start to do that, that could be huge. And the last point I would like to share is understanding, because we're going to have these levels of going up and down, and because we're going to be, some days we're going to have more energy, some days we're going to have less energy, some days we're going to be more inspired, we're going to be less inspired. We really have to understand why we're doing the thing that we're doing. You see, so many times people don't realize that if we can start to understand why it is we're doing that thing, then we have the ability to stay on board when things seem to not be working out. And that is something that is so key when it comes to the work that we're trying to do, that if we can get real clear on why it is we're doing that thing, that's going to be the anchor that we're going to have that's going to allow us to stay focused. That's going to allow us to give us that extra energy. and not just like why I'm doing it, but like a deeper level, an emotional level. So it's not just like I want to make $1 million. It's like, but why do you want to make $1 million? It's not because I want to have a nice house or go on vacation, right? And it's not just because I want to be able to support, and it's not just because I want to be able to support my community or do these things X, Y, and Z. But recognizing that if I can focus on all these different areas, then I have the ability to make something bigger happen, and I could work on myself. I want to do it for myself, for my own personal development. I want to do it for my own emotional state of becoming and doing something that I know I need to be doing. And that's what we need to focus on. That's what we need to be worrying about. So recognizing what your triggers are, starting with the small disciplines, understanding the willpower that you're going to need. Get your day started early if you're an early person, at night if you're a night person. Look to understand and get the feedback about what's going on, how it's going, really getting all that data just so we can constantly work on it. Open it up a little bit. Don't think about it something small. Think about it in the long term. And if you get clear on that why, that thing's going to be very, very helpful for you in order to be able to start breaking those habits. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and make sure to check out all the stuff that we got, all the free stuff we got down below. All righty. All the best, and have a great day, everybody.